we might see you on Saturday at the community opening of the JI building. Okay, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on where we walk, learn and work, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I recognise their custodianship and role in caring for and maintaining country over thousands of years. May their strength and wisdom be with us today and this evening. Okay, the title on the opening slide that you would have seen if you had joined in at that stage was about academic improvement at the Gap State High School. And the first part of tonight's presentation is really about sharing the work we've been doing to grow our learners, and we're all learners who flourish at the Gap State High School. So that's our students as well as our staff, all of our staff, and what we've been doing and how we can demonstrate how we have improved academic outcomes for our young people. Before I launch into the details of that, I just want to share with you a graphic of the data set that I get to have a look at as the principal, and our school leaders get to have a look at as school leaders at the Gap State High School as well, and to give you a frame of some of our very exciting challenges that we have. If you have a look at the legend at the top right hand corner of that screen, you will see that the highest category is the dark blue. And for the vast majority of our outcomes, our engagement and our attainments and our next step across our school context as of semester 1 2022, we're sitting in dark blue in all the right places. Less than 85% is not where you want to be in the dark blue. Ideally, we would be in the lowest category for that one. But in the days of COVID and people being really super supportive of, keeping their young people at home if they're not well, that less than 85% attendance is something that that's grown in recent times. Moving down to the bottom part of the screen, you will see some information that relates to our socio-economic information about our school, and our ICSEA is at 1129. The lowest is 900 and the average is 1000. So the gap sits above the average, and to give you a bit of a frame around that, the Brisbane Grammar Schools are pretty much sitting at...
Sorry, Anne, sorry, can I just interrupt you for a sec? Can you just hit your share screen again, because we've lost your presentation?
Yep.
Just in the top right.
Yep, I've got it. Yep, it's
just loading.
This is where I'm up to.
And can we also just remind everyone that we're about to start removing participants if they don't have their first and last name. So that would be helpful too.
Okay, just giving everyone a few seconds to get the housekeeping things sorted again. So I'm going to proceed.
Yep, you're good to go.
Good to go. Okay. So I was looking at our socioeconomic scale and stating that 900 is the lowest and 1200 is probably sitting at the highest. Like the Brisbane Grammar Schools are sitting at that the 1200, so we sit somewhere between that percent or that top 10 percentile. The reason I'm sharing this with you this evening is because it's important to understand that we we operate within a community that is high performing, high functioning, highly qualified. The ICSEA doesn't relate to your children at all. It actually relates to you as the parents, and it relates to your profession and qualifications and those sorts of things. So we teach live and learn in a demographic that is high performing and high functioning in many ways. And so that presents some unique and different challenges to us that I want to share with you tonight as well. As you know, we believe in learners who flourish, and we value thinking big, stepping up, paying it forward and being kind. What we believe in and what we value has been the foundational work that we have done over the last 4 years to create a frame and a language to talk to our students, our staff, our community, and you, the parents, as well. And they're important frames when you're working in a high performing school, and one that you want to maintain high performance in all aspects, academic as well as social and emotional wellbeing, and all the other facets that come with operating in a school environment. When I applied for the job to be the principal of the State High School over 5 years ago now, there had to be a reason why. All principals really have a look at what is the driving factor for why I would like to become the principal of a particular school. And one of the underlying things that principals always talk about, myself included, is if I go into that school environment, can I make a difference, and can I value add, and how would I do that? So up on the screen now is part of my why that appeared in my application through my job interview, and has been my why ever since I've arrived, including the first presentation I made to staff. When you lead a high performing school, sometimes it's really easy to think, oh, well, everything's going really well, I would just keep doing more of the same. But this is the premise that I entered this school on, and I continue to use as a touchstone to drive what I do every day in our school. So to achieve the next lift of improvement across an already high performing school, we need to create a culture where every teacher and student believes they need to improve, not because they are not good enough, but because they can be even better. And when this happens, there is no limit to what we can achieve. So that's been my mantra, my touchstone since my appointment at this school. And sometimes I go back to it to remind myself, what am I doing? Why am I here? And what's the work I'm doing, and why is it so important? And I think it's always important for people to understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so our why. A couple of years ago, we were looking at how do we make a high performing school even better. And we started looking at a particular group, and we decided that we would do a trial study around a group, and that was our Year 9 English group. And as you can see, there is some data up on your screen, and it's our level of achievement data for Year 9 English in 2021. And you'll see a fairly standard bell curve. In our school, the bell curve really rises with the Bs. In other schools, that would be the highest peak would be the Cs, and in other schools, it might even be the D. My professional and educational challenge was to understand and appreciate, with our ICSEA, with the great bones that our young people have, being highly literate and numerate, how do I move the bell curve into a different shape? And so our action research project was really about how do we grow our top B students into A students. And that is the mission that we embarked upon. Now, at our school, we have the privilege of really working with and growing our top end students. As you can see from that bell curve, it's a fairly standard bell curve across all of our core subject areas across 7, 8 and 9. So the challenge was to increase our Bs to As, because if we relied on the regional KPIs, we were already achieving those 90% across A to C for English. Well, we're doing that, and we strive to do that across all of our KLAs, all of our key learning areas, not just English. 100% QCE, QCIA, well, we do that, we achieve that. Our retention from 7 to 10 and 7 to 12, because largely our community comes from our community, we don't have a lot of students that come outside of our catchment area. We're an enrolment catchment school, so our retention is very high as well across those junctures. And our student disciplinary absences are generally 10% below the state and majority of other schools that you would look at data across our state. So there's a bit of juxtaposition, because as the leader, when I'm saying to staff, let's see if we can improve the students' outcomes and do better than we already are. It's like, well, why would we bother? Because we're already doing really well. Look, we're ticking all the boxes for the region. For me and for my leadership team and my curriculum HODs, that's not really the ideal. So we actually want to do better for all of our students across the board. And the way that we're going to do that is through looking at our action research, and that's what I'm sharing with you tonight. So these teachers in this Year 9 English group identified their top 5 B students, and we identified them as our marker students in each of the classes. There was 6 classes, 5 teachers, one Year 9 teacher had 2 of the classes, with the mission that we would strive to grow them into A students. And with the view that across the board, we wanted 90% A to C in all our curriculum areas, 100% QCE with our QCE and QCIA. And because we have our junior certificate of education as well, we're striving for 100% of our Year 9s reaching that benchmark, which is an internal and school benchmark. The exciting thing is that after doing that work for 9 months, you can see with the graph on the screen here that the students, this is the Year 9, all of the Year 9, and this is all of the Year 9 from semester 1 to semester 2. But you can see, looking at the legend, that the A's grew dramatically. Not only did the A's grow, but the B's grew, and the C's, more B's grew into A's than we anticipated, and C's grew into B's, and so on. So you can see across even a trend line across time, the impact of that work that we had from that work. And that's the really exciting outcome from the action research we did. Not only that, but I'm going to show you the next graph, which shows Queensland state schools, the regional, our region, which is metropolitan, and then our school. So bearing in mind that our region is the metro region, which is the southeast corner, which is probably the most well-resourced in terms of facilities, schools and teachers. And the Queensland State School is representing every school across the whole of our vast state. And you can see the uptick that we achieved with our students. So we're on an uptick anyway with the work we've been doing around our pedagogical framework and looking at our systematic curriculum delivery and tightening that up and increasing our alignment. But by getting a group of teachers together to do intentional collaboration once a week, and this is a photograph of those teachers having one of their once a week meetings and talking about their curriculum and their pedagogy and what they needed to do in order to change their practice and improve their practice to grow their students. The results speak for themselves and were mind-blowing to everyone, I have to say, myself included. I knew it would make a difference. I didn't anticipate the vast difference that we ended up achieving with that class. And then when you put the level of achievement graphs that we get out of one school beside each other, you'll see that the semester 1 bell curve, which was nothing to be ashamed of in the first place, because, you know, we're a great school with great kids who are highly literate and numerate already, but it changed from a bell curve to an up curve. And we've actually ended up with more students sitting in the A category than in the B category on. And so once again, the picture paints 1,000 words and shows you what a dramatic improvement, very precise and accurate work around the teaching and learning, the curriculum and the pedagogy, and changing and evolving that work on a weekly basis rather than waiting till the end of a term and the end of semester and going, oh, well, those kids didn't get it, we might have to change our ways. Teachers were doing that on a weekly basis, and it was dramatic in a most pleasing way and incredibly fulfilling for the teachers involved and for interested parties, including our assistant regional director, our regional director and external parties who got to have a look at that data as well. The next slide shows you the comparison between our 7 and 8 trends. So I've just grouped the 7 and 8. So you can see that over a period of time compared to, once again, our Year 9. So you can see, you know, there's some peaks and troughs over trends over time, but nothing as dramatic as the work, the outcomes that we achieved for students and with students when we did our intentional collaboration through that trial action research team. And there's a number of reasons for that. And if you had the opportunity to speak to the teachers about it, they would chew your ears off for a few hours telling you the excitement and what was so great about the work they were doing in relation to that. So what I would like to do now is show you a little bit of the work those very enthusiastic and excited teachers were involved in. The Action Research Project, that was a trial from last year, had some experienced teachers in the group, right down to teachers who were beginning their careers and early career teachers. And all of them could not speak more highly about the process and what they learned about themselves as teachers, what they learned from each other and what they learned about their students through engaging in the process. So I'm going to quickly show you some slides from the work they did from that Action Research trial. These slides have been taken, not only used and shared inside our school with our staff, all of our staff. I shared it with the PNC term 2 last year. This year. I've already moved on to next year. Term 2 this year. It's been shared at regional days with other principals, and our staff have been sharing the journey and what they did and how the practice improved the outcomes for our students. We work on an action research cycle, and this is based in research. It's something that our system uses, and it's something that this team, through the protocol that they created in their weekly meetings, used a model. So it's just not let's turn up and have a chat about what's happening and what students are doing. It was very targeted, evidence-based process and documented all the way through. Which was really exciting to see, and it made it a lot easier then to share the work as well. Along the journey as well, these teachers had examples of student work that they used along the way to give feedback to our students around what they needed to do to bump up their work to a level. It's called the Bump It Up strategy. Primary schools use it really, really effectively. So we're stealing one of their strategies to help us improve our practice in secondary as well. This student was one of our Marcus students. They were given some feedback about what they could do and how they could improve at drafting level or class diagnostic level. A graphic organizer was used from our PED strategy, our PED framework, which the teachers collaboratively determined was a really good way to assist students to organise and frame their work. So when they actually had to come and write their piece for English, they had a lot of structure and a lot of thinking. So even a student who maybe it wasn't their jam in terms of the topic or the unit or the genre that was needed for the writing piece, they were able to do a lot of pre-planning, so they had something to write when they got to the work, and that makes a huge difference, especially for our young people who aren't super confident about their writing, but also for our top end students in C's and B's and even in A's, because it makes them really think about their work and it allows them to work out what they need to do in order to bump up their work to the next level. So they have a lot more agency and ownership and engagement around their work. I'm not going to be showing you these videos, but you can see students were videoed as part of the action research. And the exciting part about these videos and when you go into the rooms and speak to the students is that they can actually articulate where they're at, what's the next piece of work, why they need to do it, and how by using precision or accuracy or our intellectual principles, what they need to do to improve their work. And so it's not just the teacher doing all the heavy lifting in the classroom. The students are much more self-regulating, taking much more responsibility, and then that builds in to their repertoire for future reference as well, not only in English, but what we found with these students and also our teachers, that scaled out to their other subjects and their other year levels, even in terms of with the teachers' work. So they scaled it out into other areas. The sample of work then that the student provided by the end of the term, it showed greater analysis in terms of depth and their precision that they were required to do in order to achieve an A. So the explicit nature, the direct focus, the fact that our teachers have a weekly meeting and then can go back and revisit the work with their young people in their classes, and then they've gotten much stronger and better at understanding the marking guides, understanding the cognitions, and then explicitly teaching those rather than the teacher not being 100% sure and then by default the students aren't 100% sure. That strengthened all of those features across the teaching and learning process. As you can see, again, these are graphs that you've seen already, but it's out of the PowerPoint that the teachers have shared with our staff and then outside of our school with our regional staff. The really exciting thing is that not only did our top Bs bump up to As, but many other students bumped up in their levels as well. And so the byproduct of focusing on the 5 marker students with the premise to grow those from Bs to As actually helped everyone in the class at all levels. And, you know, from my perspective, that makes it really manageable because as principal, if I say I want you to grow every single student in your classroom, it's really for an overworked teacher who has lots of marking and lots of preparation, who fundamentally works really hard and wants to make a difference to young people. It can sometimes feel overwhelming. So for us to narrow and sharpen that focus to saying, let's just focus on the top 5 B students and what are we going to do? What are you going to do with your practice individually and collectively in your teams to grow them? It feels much more manageable. But the collective result is that improves every single student in the classroom, which is, you know, a dream. And thank you for the person who's clapping because it really is exciting. So these pedagogical strategies, which are from our Teaching for Innovative Learning and Engagement, which we embarked on that journey 4 years ago. It's a bespoke PED framework that has been written and designed for the Gap State High School, for our learners, where they're at, for our teachers, where they're at, but also where we want to grow to. Is shared by everyone and all teachers are using that framework. But through the Action Research Project, this is one of our teachers, Bianca. She wasn't in the Action Research Project, but she was listening to what the teachers from Year 9 were talking about, jumped on, looked at one of the strategies that they were doing and using, and then already started embedding it in with her classes and in her subject areas for Year 9 English and Year 9 Humanities. And you can see the visuals on the pinboard in her room about how she explicitly worked with students and talked to them about how they could bump it up. And a lot of that involves individual conferencing as well. So some explicit teaching, working collaboratively with cooperative learning teams in class, with students, with each other, and then conferencing with the teacher as well. The story continues this year. So at the very beginning of this year, all those teachers, those 5 teachers and the English HOD, then scaled that up. They shared all of their practice, they shared their research with our whole staff, and then those teachers started sharing the pedagogical pieces that they used in their Action Research Project. From there, we wanted to scale up because we knew once we had felt like we cracked the atom of teaching and learning and how to grow everyone, the teachers as well as our students, how do we give more people this opportunity? And you would not be surprised to hear that everyone who heard about this, looked at it, shared in the practice, heard the stories, engaged in the professional development, said, I want some of that. How do I get that as well? And so we did scale up. And so this year we have 4 action research teams. So we've moved out of trial. We now call them pilot because it's the next scale up. I feel like a pyramid selling principle when I talk about this, but if you think about a pyramid from the bottom up, the trial was a little tiny group testing it all out, the bottom of the pyramid, and then we've gone up to the next tier where we've got 4 core areas doing the work, and the people who are in the trial then are building the capacity of the people who are in the pilot. And so through the learning gets deeper and richer, and they share their practice across 4. So this is the scale up team. So we have a year 8 maths, a year 9 science, a year 7 humanities, and a year 10 English, and the staff involved. So many more students, many more staff, and we have shadow heads of department who are leading those teams to do that work. So I'm really happy with the way my pyramid selling of education is going at the moment, because that's scaled out to many more teachers and many more students across the school, and we're going really well with that. And the student outcomes speak for themselves, and so I'm going to share some of those. And what I might get you to do, because I'm going to flick through these pretty quickly because I'm nearly halfway through and I've still got the other half to go, is to just have a look at the top line. It's the A results 2020 semester 1, then to semester 1 the following year, then to semester 1 in 2022. And you can see we are continuously bumping our kids up. And I'll just flick through and show you some of the other data sets around that as well. And so here's the year 10 English. Now, bearing in mind some of those students were marker students in year 9. They're not necessarily the marker students in year 10, but the process is the same. So they might have been getting the benefit of year on year in our science as well. And you can see across the goal of bumping up B's to A's is certainly paying off, but broadly across the whole cohort in those core areas as well. And you can see it in humanities as well. Okay, so successes. So we've had lots of successes, because if you were able to eavesdrop on a conversation with the teachers involved, they will tell you that it's made a difference to their teaching. I've had some teachers who have been quite experienced, and they feel renewed, reinvigorated by being part of this culture of teaching and learning. People are reinvigorated about their own professional learning and the level of distributed leadership that they have opportunities to engage. So all teachers in those groups have chances to engage and develop themselves as future leaders, curriculum leaders, pedagogical leaders in our school as well. At the P&C meeting last week, I had my English HOD and a shadow HOD for humanities attend and speak. Obviously, that's really tricky to do on an online environment, and it's just part of our presentation. But one of the science folk wrote a testimonial, and so I'm going to give you a few seconds to read Phil Driver's testimonial about what he's discovered by being involved in this work as a shadow head of department for science. Any messages from our moderators?
Not so far, all good.
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the successes are many, and we are just so excited by the work and the level of conversation around the right work at the right time for the right students, and all of our students are the right students. Unfortunately, the challenge is that not everyone is getting access to this level of opportunity. And so to innovate and create a space to do this has been the ultimate challenge. There is insufficient time in our school day to provide every teacher with the same opportunity as our action research teacher teams. Originally, the bigger strategic plan for me as the leader, in consultation with my leadership team, was where our pyramid selling model would have another layer in it, and that would be another phase of implementation where we would move out to 7 areas. But our system operates on an allocative model. And so I'm only given a certain number of teachers and resources every year. And whilst I have some autonomy around how I can use those resources, when the push came to shove around scaling it up to yet the next tier, I couldn't do it. I couldn't staff the school, offer the subject choices, offer the range of things that we had. So it was going back to the drawing board a little bit and going, well, how do I give this to everyone? So the Time For is a solution to this challenge. And Time For is something that we've given it a working title for, a bit of a nickname for, is that it's time for teachers to do the work they really want to do but don't have any time for. Time for intentional collaboration, time for to think about what is the right work for every learner in their classroom. Time to do that. The system, as in terms of the department, we work on a really fixed, and it's an industrial model. I've been doing this job for 35 years, and the same 70 minutes a week has been all that teachers have been provided. And I'm going to give you a frame of reference about how old I am. When I first started teaching in 1987, kids were still being caned and people smoked in staff rooms. And that was really hard for a non-smoker, let me tell you. And kids being caned was another thing I really struggled with as a young person. But very shortly after that, many things changed in terms of those sorts of conditions. And, government changed, of course, as well. But the allocation teachers were given to do the work. P.S. There was not a phone in my staff room and we didn't use computers. We had one computer lab that was like state of the art, and you had to put in a big floppy disk to do your work back in those days. So over a career that started with staff that smoked in staff rooms and kids got caned to today, the expectation on the teaching profession is vast and massive. The level of 24/7-ness around connectivity and workload has increased dramatically, but the time our profession has to do the work has not moved with the times. So this is why we started having this conversation. And there will be questions, and I'm hoping Julie and Caroline are helping you through some of those, but the questions really about this are for me as well as our system, as well as for you, for parents. Systemness looks like collaboration. So all our strategic documents from the department and government about we need to collaborate, but they don't give us any time to do that. All of our documents say we need to align, and we know that, and we're doing a really, really good job, and we're incredibly lucky at this school that we have great kids who mainly come to school every day to engage in teaching and learning, but we don't have the time to do that really, really well. And the system wants us to deliver with precision. So that means precision in knowing the curriculum, knowing the standards, knowing how to teach that so well that our students have the best opportunity to access their learning and to reach the potential that they deserve. We don't have the time. So out of this is how we're proposing to do that. So that's really the next piece of information that I want to share with you this evening. So if you just bear with me a moment, I'm going to shut down this PowerPoint, which will be available to you to access from our school website, close of business on Friday. And I'm going to move into another written report that shows you the change management process that we have been through to create this space for all of our teachers to have time to do the work to support every learner at the Gap State High School. Now, the document that I'm going to be putting up next has an important disclaimer on it. As some of you may know, as some of our new parents coming in, sometimes there's slow media days for the Courier Mail and our local papers. And sometimes what we do at the Gap is fodder for the media. And usually they never quote me correctly, or they write it like they've interviewed me. I've never spoken to the media, but they pull out my newsletters, they pull out anything that parents I can send emails to, and they get hold of parent emails. I don't know how, but that's why I've chosen to go with a information sharing opportunity first, and then we'll put up the documents second, because I think it's really incredibly important to give you the story directly from me before people start coming up with what they think things happening. Julie, I need your help because I can't unshare to open my next document. Can you put your slide in, please, so I can do the other? Thanks.
Okay, you should be good now.
Okay. Okay, still not letting me. I'll browse my computer. I'll try that. Sorry, everyone. We had tested this all before. It's going quite well.
Do you want me to share it from mine?
Yeah, can you, it's still not saying I can close it. So that's what I'm struggling with at the moment, Julie.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so can I slide around this, or I need you to slide around
you'll
it?
need me.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Can you maximize that screen so it's easier for people to see, or is it maxed already?
I can make it bigger. How's that?
Yeah, maybe down a touch. Okay, thank you. I'm hoping you've had a chance to have a bit of a breather and maybe a drink of water. There's the disclaimer on the bottom, so please keep that in mind when you're having a look at the material. I don't want to be Courier Mail news next week. And it's important for you to know that all of this material has been shared with my Assistant Regional Director. This is a journey we've been on for the last 3 years, one way or another. So it's not, whilst it may feel like new and recent to you as parents, there's been a lot of change management work going on in the backgrounds behind this. So thanks, Julie. If you can go to the next slide. A bit cryptic, bell times, and people go, why are you saying bell times when there's much more than bell times? But when we started the work, it started about bell times, and in fact our bell times have changed over the last 4 years, because we've tried to align many things to be smarter and more creative with the way we get to use our time across the school day. And you'll see that the 2022 bell times are there as we know it. And if Julie scrolls down a little bit, you'll see that the next bell times are pretty much exactly the same. Back a few steps, we'd actually modified the bell times a little bit further, but the feedback was that people didn't want that. So we listened to that feedback and we rearranged that. So the only real difference in the 2023 bell times is that we have just switched over Assembly and Connect with period 3. And that came from a lot of feedback from our heads of year and our wellbeing teams about how we could do that time differently. And Assembly and Connect are, often whole school things. So that's a decision we made. It doesn't change anything about the contact time for students. It's just a reorganisation of the flow across a Monday. You will see in the small print, it says from 12:10 to 1:20 is the 70-minute period 3, and that school finishes at the end of period 3. So potentially that's when our students could finish school if that's suitable to them. Then we have our normal school break, and then period 4 is time 4. So for our teachers, it's time to do the work you have seen in the action research trial and pilot. And for students, that looks like something else. And that's now what I want to share with you in the second half of tonight's presentation. Thanks, Julie. So the change to Monday finish time is about working with a high-performing context and improving it and growing it as well. And that's actually really, really tough work to grow and improve high-performing is actually really, really tough work. So I'm not going to read out every word of this, but suffice to say, time 4 is the right time for us to do this work because of some other constraints that I don't have control of from the system. So some key things that you need to know. There is no change to the dedicated teaching time for all of our key learning areas. So we are not compromising on the Australian curriculum or the allocation of time to teaching all of those subjects, except for Year 9 HPE. And the reason there's an except for Year 9 HPE is because we're going to trial something new with Year 9 HPE. So traditionally, Year 9 HPE has been 2 lessons a week for the whole year. What we've chosen to do is test out stacking and chunking Year 9 HPE with Year 9 applied positive psychology. And that way, if I give you an example, Year 9 AHPE could have Miss Moran for semester 1, and then they could move into Year 9 applied positive psychology and have Miss Moran teaching them. So same teacher, same class. So it frees up our resources by stacking and chunking that way. Alternatively, Mr. Moran, the HPE teacher, could teach the Year 9 HPE, and then an APS teacher could teach the semester 2 of the applied psych. But then meanwhile, Mr. Moran's teaching the same semester to 9B and vice versa on the timetable. So our teachers get to either teach the same class across 2 areas, or alternatively, they get to teach 2 different classes, but it's the same work that they're covering in the semester. So we're always considering how we can improve workload and work conditions for our staff as well. And we figure this ticks boxes in terms of that, but also in terms of relationships and time spent with young people in a subject area. Scrolling down a little bit further, we have, and you know, I gave you a little example of smoking and caning, but over the last 30 years, nothing has changed in terms of how we support teachers to do their work. And if you've ever met one that's a teacher, you'll know they spend nights, weekends, holidays doing their work. So we put it to our staff to see if there was an appetite to go to this 19-period week and create a space to do the work. And we did an indicator survey before we rushed down the rabbit hole and started doing all of this other work. And our teachers voted 62 for yes and 19 for no. And then we did a lot of consultation talking about what that would look like and what the implications are and the pros and cons. And then we ended up with 59 votes for yes and 24 votes for no. Recent feedback at a Gap Branch Queensland Teachers Union meeting highlighted when one of my staff members said, is the government, is the department looking at providing any more time for teachers to do the important work for our students? And the answer was no, can't see that happening anytime soon. So that reinforced our need to carve out some time ourselves and be creative around how we were doing that. So scrolling down, this is the proposal. I'm going to talk big picture and I'm going to talk about what we've had to give up to create that. And so it might be worthwhile, Julie, if you can scroll to the appendices for me, because I want to highlight the sport situation there. Yeah. So many, as a leader of the school, there's many balls I have to have up in the air and operating at any one time. And one of those balls was our inter-school sport model. Now, our region's in a state of flux. For those of you who don't know, there's been a decision that there'll be an 8th educational region in Queensland. That 8th educational region is going to be created in the southeast corner, where the vast majority of schools, staff and students are. And so currently the GAP sits in Metro, and Metro is as far out as Lowood and as far out as Albany Creek and probably a bit further beyond. I don't know what the edge is, can't remember, sorry. That's changing, and they're using the river and saying the GAP will now be in Metro North, and everyone on the other side of the river will be in Metro South, and with some trimmings around the edges for other regions. So we're in a state of flux around our region. Our district sport regions in a state of flux, because they knew the educational regions were going to change. For 2023, they said we're going to keep it as is, but knowing it's only going to be as is for 2023, and then things are going to change there as well. So the fact that I couldn't scale up my teaching triangle to the next level and support it through the allocative model, the fact that sport is in quite a dramatic state of flux where lots of change is going to be happening in the short term. I'm met up with the principals in all of our schools that we associate with through the district and inter-school sport model to talk about what's next. And we went through some resolutions that some were resolved and some were yet to be resolved. But Julie, if you can scroll down to the bottom paragraph, I think it's really that the provocation that we're all dealing with is that we need to rethink sport. We need to reimagine inter-school sport into the short-term future. Gone are the days of school competing in weekly comps, organisational issues, resourcing, traffic, distances, accessing courts, fields, industrial requirements, lack of willingness of staff to take on the local sports co-roles. Consideration of modified games to support all levels of students' abilities, and Indigenous games opportunities was another thing mentioned. So at principal level, we were having all of these conversations on the side as well around what is that going to look like, what can we do? And so at principal level, a decision was taken that we're going for 2023, we're going to try a couple of different things. And so please feel free when that document comes out to have a read of it and see what you think, but I'll get you to scroll back up for me, Julie, so I can connect back in with the rest of the presentation. If you check out this table, thank you. So part of my concern was, you take something away, you've got to replace it with something. And sure, it won't be the weekly sport for 7 and 8. For some of you who have students who are in year 9 already, you know there's been a gala day. And we trialled gala day this year, and we'll continue with a gala day next year. Kelvin Grove and the GAP have decided to test out a festival day model that we are looking at for next year that's similar to a day a semester, and it's a whole day so our young people can go out and be immersed. Some of the feedback around the inter-school sport model was that you go on the bus, you drive out there, you spend 40 minutes on a bus, and you spend 5 or 10 minutes playing, depending on when the other school gets there through their traffic and on their bus, and then you get back on the bus and spend another 40 minutes getting back. So the fit for purpose model, has been really highlighted through my conversations with a range of people there. So you can see that it's given the threat of losing sport has given us an opportunity to reimagine what those things could be like. And when I looked at it with my teams, year 7, if we use that as an example, they would have 2 festival days, and I'll show you some proposed models for what that could look like. We're very incredibly lucky that all of our kids have the opportunity to go to a camp every year. That doesn't happen in any other school that I know of. So feeding it around, their time out of school on a camp, which supports the applied positive psych subject. And then across every term, there's something going on in terms of physical movement, creating a sense of belonging and being involved. Not only that, but we have our swimming carnival, our cross country and our track and field. Not only that, we have our lunchtime movement and engagement events that where our student leaders, who are our school captains of house and our teacher house mentors are looking at creating spaces in our breaks where students can engage and be involved in movement. A lot of our kids here are, if you go look at the quad, lots of kids play handball every day. There's kids down the oval running around doing stuff, but we'd like to increase that and make a stronger house culture piece around that. If you can scroll down, Julie, now to the next appendices. There's lots of frequently asked questions there as well that if we get time, I'll go back to, but will be available for you to read. And I'm hoping I'm addressing through unpacking some of these documents that are in the appendices. So, Julie, can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. Yep, keep going down to the, yes. Okay, so if we can have a look at the Inter-School Festival. I think it's the one up. Got the red writing on it. Excellent. Stop. Go there. That's it.
Sorry, everything's freezing. It keeps moving on me.
Okay, that's okay. Thanks. So, so I've had some conversations with some staff and some students, and I'm having conversations with Kelvin Grove for us to co-construct this. But I wanted to share with you what we have, the concepts that we've built up. So we're not putting it on the table above and going, well, there's a blank piece of paper, there's nothing there. So a fair amount of thinking has happened already. And we're yet to work out how we're going to implement that, but I'm confident with only 2 schools, it's going to be a lot easier than say with 5 schools. So on those festival days, which are the inter-school festival days, these are some of our ideas. So the kids are really interested in division type sports. You'll see the list there, and there'll be a summer and winter model like there are now. But not only can you go out and play those games, you can go out for the day and play games. That games are just fun, that you can hang out with your friends, do some physical activity, and make it a bit more like there could be food trucks there, a barbecue there, some food things there, because we're anticipating that between the 2 schools it'd be 300, 400 students would go. But by the same token, some of those things aren't really attractive to our students. And like, we know this from experience, because we know the number of kids who get signed out at lunchtime on Wednesday because they actually don't want to do any of those things that we've had on our menu of sports currently. But we are hoping that by opening it up and having some student agency and voice about what they would like to do, what they would enjoy doing, we might attract more students to be involved. So around 100 to 200 students, we look at some extreme sports like mountain biking, hiking, surfing, rock climbing, sailing, canoeing, some cultural games, some things like dancing, scooter skatering, yoga, mediation, golf. These are just some ideas, and obviously we couldn't offer every single one of those. We would work out which ones would be the semester 1 offerings and which one would be the semester 2 offerings. Also, Year 7, because we want to start smaller, we want to start like a trial, make sure it goes really, really well at a year level. So the 7s and 8s would be offset at this stage is what we're thinking. And then depending on how it goes, we might scale that up and do 2 year levels, and we'll see how that goes. But that's a rough plan of what we're sort of looking at with that model. Julie, now if you can go to the inter-house days, that would be good as well. Thank you. So the Inter-House Festival days, that there's going to be one of those on the calendar. We're creating a program. There's lots of excitement about this because it's only in the last few years that we've invented 8 houses. Before that we had 3, which was really hard to manage. There was not one venue in the school that could take that many students in a spot. So by breaking it down, the students get to know each other, and there's a greater use of the vertical 7 through to 12. We have senior captains, house captains, we have junior house captains, and then we have house leaders across every year level. So it's a really nice way to bring that house culture, create that sense of belonging. And you can see there's some ideas. Once again, these have come from some students and some staff that I have spoken to. And it's an idea, it's in concept at the moment, but this is what we're hoping to achieve next year. and we'll build a house culture. If you can just scroll down a little bit more for me, Julie, please. You'll see that once a term, they'll get to do that. We do a lot of the getting to know your house and build your teams in term 1 through our orientation sort of early weeks and our house assemblies. And then they get to put the rubber on the road by, doing something, whether it's a choir, a rap, a dance off, a drum off, or whatever the kids decide. They're going to have some autonomy and choices, and then they learn it and engage with it on their day within the term. And then in the following week, houses who want to perform can perform. And then we have a big house off on the Friday, and the top 4 houses can perform, and the kids all can come in and vote for who they think did the best job. This term we had the Army Band come in during our mental health week, and it was incredible the amount of young people who flocked in and bopped around and just smiles on their faces and had a really good time. So we're figuring, if we build it, then students engage with it. But if there's nothing, if there's nothing to do, so look at my phone, then teenagers will look at their phone. The kids are playing the quad will play. The kids who want to run the oval will run around. But we're hoping that we make these things really accessible to a lot more kids. And it doesn't matter that you can't sing, you're in a choir and you're with your friends and you're with your house, and it'll be a good time all around, hopefully. Now, Julie, if you can scroll back up to the time for, please, because this is really the linchpin of this conversation. The frequently asked questions will address what happens to my child in time for. So based on our experience of working with secondary students, a lot of our 11s and 12s flex in and out anyway around their commitments and their timetables and their schedules. So that happens very, very regularly across 11 and 12 already. And a lot of our Year 10 students already started traineeships and apprenticeships, and so they flex in and flex out or have days out to support those things as well. So what we're envisaging is the vast majority of our senior students, and by senior students, I'm talking about 10s, 11s and 12s, probably won't be interested in coming to school staying at school every Monday afternoon and doing one of these programs, but there's going to be different offerings every term, and different things will appeal to different groups of students. But particularly for our Year 6 mums and dads watching tonight, looking at the screen, it's an opportunity for us to create, extra things for your extra and co-curricular things for your young person to engage in. So we've put together a bit of a model. One of the deputies, Cameron Drew, is working on this, and these are just ideas, but you'll see things from Leadership Training Centre, like we do rock climbing here as a club. So, let's make that club happen on a Monday afternoon. Some of our instrumental music teachers, they are still here. They aren't part of the intentional collaboration work. So instrumental music classes could potentially happen there, which means our students aren't being withdrawn from their timetable lessons for half an hour to go to instrumental music. It could happen then. Tutoring, all different types of tutoring, from our alumni to external providers. External providers looking at study skills and time management and yoga. There's so many things that we are looking at that we can provide. Note, our library is open to 4 o'clock every afternoon, and it will be open to 4 o'clock on Monday afternoons as well. So we know some of our students like to stay together and they have study groups and study circles. So that just means they could go to the library and go from, lunchtime basically to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or they leave at 3 because they get the opportunity to do their study group that afternoon instead. So many opportunities that we're going to be looking at, and we plan to do it well and make sure it's highly successful, the first iterations. But once again, we want parent voice and student voice around what would be great for your young person to have access to on a Monday afternoon, because when you give us that information, then we source it and we're going to put it on a menu of options for parents and students to consider. You will see some things like study rooms are going to be supervised from week 1 to week 10. So if at the very least you would say to your young person, I want you to stay at school and do your homework or do some study, supervise at school before you get on your bus and come home, because I'm not at home till later and I don't want you in the house by yourself. It's free, it will happen. But there's lots of other opportunities as well. And some of those you'll see every second week. So it gives you some flexibility around those things as well. And your imagination is as limitless as what we can put on a menu to offer students. Obviously, there's some constraints. Some things are going to have a fee for, because we're accessing external people to provide those resources and services. Some things will be free. Important for you to know that the teachers will be doing intentional collaboration. There's a protocol, there's a set routine. Every single teacher will be involved in that. So it will be our teacher aides and our other non-teaching staff that will be involved in the supervision and looking after the groups of students who choose to take up some of these options. Okay, Julie, if you can take me back up to the frequently asked questions. Yeah, so just reiterating then that no curriculum time is being compromised. 7 and 8 sport on a Wednesday afternoon has been taken off the plate, but hopefully you can see what we've done to compensate for that weekly segment being taken off the plate, and what we're going to do in lieu of that. Is there any burning questions coming from the chat, Julie, that aren't answered in frequently asked, or things that you haven't answered?
I'm just a bit concerned because there's no questions coming through at all. So either you've done a stellar job, or people are just thinking. So I'm just not sure if there are questions and people are just holding off.
We do have a hand.
Christine's got their hand up.
Excellent.
Yeah. Christine, do you want to type that in the chat?
Is the chat working, folks?
We're just trying to work out.
Maybe not. People have got their mouth on.
Hang on. I can't see the hand up anymore. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yep, I can see. I'm just.
Okay, Christine.
We got the chat.
Christine, do you just want to turn your mic on for us and ask your question that way? And I'm just going to try and find out why our chat's not working.
Hi, Christine.
Oh, hi, I can unmute. Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute. No, I just wanted to flag that the chat is indeed not working, so that we couldn't type. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Everyone. It was really, really good.
Sorry, everyone, about that. We swapped from Zoom to Teams this time because we've been using Teams much more, and it's much easier for us these days compared to Zoom with what we started back in the day. Julie, maybe given people haven't had the opportunity to ask the questions on the way through, do you just put up the email address and then we will do our best to add them to the frequently asked questions, or Julie is really good at responding to those as well. So Julie, I'll hand over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Anne. So I've just put the email address in the chat. So I am hoping that people are able to see the chats that Carolyn and I are putting in at least. So I have put our communication email address for the school, which is just communication@thegapshs.eq.edu.au. And so please feel free to send through any questions or comments through to that email address, and we will add those to our frequently asked questions. Or if it's something that sort of is just quite niche or unique, I will just reply to that directly to you. So I apologise for that. Not sure what we did wrong there. So we're all a bit amateurish at the moment with our technology.
Okay, thank you, Julie. So I'm sorry I have gone over the designated hour, and Julie will be smiling to herself knowing that's fairly typical, I guess, but you know, there's lots of information and lots of backstory to tell you and share with you and celebrate with you. So for me, it was really, really important for you to know the journey and the work that we've been doing to get us to this point. So hopefully you have that big picture understanding of why we're privileging this time and this work, because I know just the flow and effect of it is just incredible. And I look forward to hearing your questions, and if there's anyone out there, friends, parents, any of friends that haven't been able to attend the sessions, there's one more session that I'm conducting in person on Thursday morning, and that is a live session, and we call it a Cuppa with Leadership, and basically I'll be doing this version of this presentation again. So if you missed out or you've got burning questions that you want to come and ask me in person, I will be here again Thursday morning. I believe my personal assistant has sent out the link or the invitation, and so you have to RSVP just to make sure we're going to have a big enough room. If we can have the conference room, we'll do that. But if 100 people are coming, then we'll go to the auditorium and set it up there, just to make sure we've got the a right amount of space for the for the amount of people who are interested in that presentation as well. And please remind.
Sorry, and just letting people know that, yes, we did send out the invitation for that, but if it's been lost in all of your emails and you still would like to come through, use that same communication email address as well, and we'll make sure we are putting you on the list.
Excellent. Thank you.
Also, if you're, and Sophie was great, she's identified that if you do want to ask a question, you can do it in the Q&A little icon at the top to the right of the chat. Yeah. So you can ask some questions there if you want to do that, if we haven't answered that today either. Sorry, Anne.
That's okay. Okay, I guess I'm unsure of how many mums and dads I've got online with us tonight who are Year 6 parents coming into Year 7. And I appreciate that when you did your enrolment interview, this wasn't like on the table in front of you, but I can assure you it's been 3 years in the making. We were thinking it'd be another year before we landed it. But please encourage any of your peers that weren't able to maybe be here tonight or at the PNC to join, or encourage them to have a look at the website, to have a look at the documented materials as well, or make contact with the school, because we're really happy to talk about the work. We're really proud of the work that staff are doing in this space, and whilst there's been some tension around losing our Year 7 and 8 sport on a weekly basis, we believe for the greater good that it's worth that investment, and knowing we're compensating for that in other ways, and at the same time strengthening our house culture and our sense of belonging for our students by the other things that we can do in our school. So, moderators, am I free to say goodbye? Are we good to go?
Yep, there's nothing that's been asked in the Q&A yet, but certainly just an email on that email address I have posted in the Q&A as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Julie, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I hope that's provided some answers. And please be in touch with us if you've still got some burning questions. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thanks everyone for your support.
Thank you. Bye-bye.